travel a lot. You have an amazing opportunity to travel around the world with the work you do. And in 2008, you did the first part of By Any Means,
Yeah.
Which saw you travelling around like by all sorts of means, like elephants and boats. What was your favourite means of travel?
Yeah, that was great fun. I mean, the By Any Means, where we went from Ireland to Sydney, and the idea was to go overland and any form of transport you can possibly imagine. So bikes, cars, trucks, elephants, tuk-tuks, you name it. We did it. I think one of the funnest forms of transport was driving a tuk-tuk in Mumbai, and that, you know, it's a pretty crazy place, India, and you know, it is like total chaos when you go on the roads, and people are just coming at you everywhere, and most people have put their rearview mirrors, just turn them in so nobody looks behind, and so it is kind of crazy. That is good fun. I think one of the worst journeys I had on that was when we went from Timor to Darwin, from East Timor, which is in Indonesia, to Darwin in Australia, and it was supposed to take 3.5 days, and it ended up taking 6.5 days on this really small boat, and 3.5 of the days we were in 10-foot swell storm, and I remember the boat just you disappear into this trough, and all you could see was water around you, and it lasted for 3.5 days, and we were going over 45-degree angles, and that was, and we were doing 1 knot an hour for 3 days. And I remember looking at my GPS once, and I was lying at the bottom of the boat, because if you get to the bottom of the boat and you go in the middle of the boat is where it rocks the least, and I was lying down there looking at my GPS, and it said 250 miles to any land whatsoever. And you know, and I remember that, you know, with the prop of the boat, it creates a turbulence,
Yeah.
and that turbulence was coming around and was actually overtaking us. The actual, you know, the wake of the water, and it really messes with your mind.
Oh, wow.
And I've never been so happy in my life to see land.
What was it that drew you to motorbikes? Was it something that developed suddenly, or was it long-winded?
Yeah, it was pretty long-winded actually. I think the first motorbike I rode, I was 7 years old, and a little monkey bike, and little Honda, and that was good. And I remember going past my dad on the motorbike, and I remember my dad grabbing me by the hair and pulling me off the bike just before the bike went into a barbed wire fence. So I remember that, and I think indirectly, I think my father, you know, when I sat on the set of Deliverance and was given that little tricycle, and I spent hours going around the thing. I think that's probably what started it. But I think I've got a lot to thank a guy called Tommy Rochford for, and he was a friend of mine in where I grew up in Ireland. And I used to hear this 2-stroke engine racing around, and I eventually, when I was about 12, I eventually plucked up the courage to ask him for a go on his motorbike, and it was a Mako 400. It was the bike of the time. That was it. That was the one to have, and I was too small to stand up on my own on it. So he started the bike, put me on, put it in first gear, and pushed me off, and I rode around the field, and then promptly fell off again, and that was it. I was hooked for life, and so ever since then, motorbikes have been in my life, always.
The second part of By Any Means, where you focusing a lot on your love for motorbikes, and for the first part of the journey, you opened the invitation for any bikers to kind of join you on that.
Yeah.
1,500 bikers turned up.
Yeah.
Was you expecting such a turnout, and how did it work?
It was a Monday morning, and I thought, oh God, because we delayed it a day, and I thought, well, you know, no one's going to turn up. And we'd set it on the radio and put it out on Twitter and, you know, all those Facebook and all that kind of stuff. And it's funny because you go along, and we've done a couple of ride outs before on some of the other shows, and as you turn up to the place, you just pray that somebody turns up, you know. And you always think, God, if it could just be more than 20, that'd be fantastic. And so we came up around over this hill and in Manly, and came down into this car park, and there were 1,500 people all waiting. I reckon they all just used me as an excuse to take a day off work, but it was an amazing feeling, and it was fantastic. People had made the effort to come out, and we all rode out together, and we spent most of the day riding up the east coast of Australia, and it's pretty impressive. That ride out of Sydney is pretty amazing, and there was a guy called Wayne Gardner who was there, and he was back in my day when I was a kid. He was the man. Him and Barry Sheen were the two big guys in motor racing. And I was riding out of Sydney with Wayne Gardner, who'd rung me to ask if he could come, and it was like, sure, and he was my hero, you know.
Going back to 2004,
Yeah.
you became an ambassador for UNICEF.
Yeah.
Out of all the charities operating, why did you choose them?
I think because both you and I, when we decided to do Long Way Round, we both have children that we were leaving behind, and they were quite young, our children, and that was one of the hardest things about the whole trip, was spending time away from our kids. I think, and then we were looking for a charity that had representation in all the countries that we were going through, and someone said to us, look, you know, you should have a look at UNICEF. Because they have representation all over the world, and they really did have representation in just about every country we went through. And so we had a chat with them, and they loved the idea, and we wanted to do a few visits in each of the shows, and a relationship was born, and since then we've worked with them ever since, and both Ewan and I are now ambassadors, and along with, you know, David Beckham and Roger Moore. But no, it's great fun, and you know, and because of the TV shows we do, we have a chance to be able to show people what's going on around the world, and you know, if you think you got it rough here, it's a very different world out there.
You mentioned Roger Moore. Was he your favourite Bond?
Roger, yeah. No, well, Sean Connery was my favourite, but I think Roger Moore, I like him for his clothes. He had the perfect 60s. Do you know that Roger Moore, in nearly all of his movies and TV shows, always did his own wardrobe? Did you know that? Roger Moore, he's an amazing man. He's devoted his life to UNICEF now, and that's all he does. He goes around and promotes UNICEF. So, you know, my hat off to him.
What would you say your favourite part about working within the media? Would you say it's the travelling aspect or the kind of people you meet?
I think for me, there's a couple of things really. I really enjoy coming up with the ideas and the creative side of that, and then going and pitching it to someone, and then getting the money, and I love producing them. I love getting people involved to help me make the TV show. I love that part, and that's the most frustrating part as well. Is all the pre-production, getting all the visas and the permission, and the minute you tell anybody that you're a TV crew, then everything changes. And so once you get through months and months of that, and then finally you get to go on the trip, that's the payoff. And you know, all that hard work, you know, just disappears once you step on that car or that boat or whatever it is to go off and do your adventure. And that's the bit. I think we did a lot of training with the SAS, ex-SAS guys and stuff, and when you do stuff for the BBC, you have to do a hostile environmental training course where you learn about first aid and advanced first aid and all sorts of stuff. And one of the guys said, look, Charlie, if you can get through the prep, he said, the journey's easy. And he's so true. It's so true. It's just so much fun. And it's all over so quickly. So you've got to remember, if you convince somebody to give you a bit of money to go off and travel and make a show about it, you've got to remember to enjoy it and savour every moment, because it's over in a flash.